e-bike of the year.
No.
We end with that. We end with that.
How do you know if this is running? Oh, catching you!
Fatswa.
Oh! The barrel roll 180 maneuver. Sorry, Chris.
What the f? Oh my God.
Welcome everybody, thank you all for tuning in. Hopefully you've enjoyed this series and build up here to the grand finale and roundtable discussion of the mid-power, lightweight, half-fat, low-fat, I don't know, there's a whole lot of names. We got to figure this out. Category of mid-power e-bikes. We've got a pretty action-packed show, I think. There are some bee stings, some crashes,
Broken chains.
There was some broken chains for sure. Hopefully you guys enjoy. Stay tuned and we're gonna dive into all these bikes and let you know what we think. So in today's episode, let me introduce our team of reviewers here. We've got Sour Patch Sean, Nick Hall, Chris Joyce, who we're gonna be calling Neighbor Chris. We wrangled him up from the cul-de-sac down the street. He is our resident dad shredder, the general consumer, and I think someone that will be a great addition to reality check us guys who haven't paid for a bike for way too long. So thank you, Chris, for coming.
Yeah,
along.
of course.
Of course, we'd also like to thank Discover Klamath and Klamath Falls, as well as the Running Y Resort for hosting us and having some amazing trails for us to access and ride that are e-bike friendly and legal. Of course, Schwalbe Tires with the Tacky Chan. We should really thank those tires because they saved us a lot.
Many times.
Amazing. Ninja Performance for the protection, as well as Glade Optics for the eyewear, keeping us safe and seeing well out on the trails. All right, so working through the list alphabetically, we'll be starting off with the Forestal Siryon. It is a 170 mil front and rear wheel traveled 29er. It is the only bike with the Bafang drive unit, has a 350 watt-hour battery and delivers 60 Newton meters of torque. We'll just really quickly touch on Geo. 488 reach, 625 stack, 353 bottom bracket height with a 446 stays and a 1,284 millimeter wheelbase, making it the longest bike in the roundup. 77 degree seat tube angle and a 64 degree head tube angle. So electronics and integration, drive unit.
I mean, integration's pretty good.
Okay.
I think the controller is a bit soft to touch. Like the rubber buttons are not
A little mushy.
Yeah, you don't get a good feel on them. The screen display, I think that's very sleek. Yeah. The Android operating system is neat, but it does take a few minutes to start up.
Yeah.
Drive unit feels good when it's not being overworked.
Okay.
It does start to overheat a bit, at least on
our bike.
Hot, long climbs.
And we may have a motor or drive unit that's not fully
possibly.
prepped.
Yeah.
But I mean, that 60 Newton meters out of the Eon drive is still, it's pretty comparable to the rest of the 60 Newton meter bikes we have on test.
Yeah. I know you were pretty stoked the first time you got on it, and you're like maps and G-force airtime calculator.
Lots of gadgets to play with.
Yeah.
A little bit overwhelming. I kept staring down at it quite a bit, to be honest.
Okay.
But I think once you get used to it, there's a lot of features in there for a person like myself to use. Like there's a training app. There's a map app that obviously you don't want to stare at, but it'd be nice to have available if you want it. I did notice, you guys said it took a while to boot. I was able to pedal it and power it.
Yes.
And so it didn't take as long as we noticed the first
Because
time.
you can ride it without the computer
Yeah,
being
as
booted.
soon as the lights on the controller come on, then you can start getting
you can start using the pedal assist.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had no complaints. Like I said, once you get used to it, no issues.
Getting into like geo comfort on the bike, kind of how the bike felt, where did you guys think? I liked the geometry. I thought, you know, the reach was just a little outside my comfort zone, but by millimeters, so it wasn't a complaint. Slackest or tied with the slackest with the transition relay. So it's definitely an aggressive bike. I mean, it's a 170 bike, but I thought by and large, it was a pretty well-rounded long travel bike geo.
Yeah, for what its intended use is, I think it's really set up well to give you a very stable, comfortable ride and have, you know, the geo to really support going down steep stuff. Like, it's set up to do kind of that top end enduro riding, and I think it has the numbers to support that, and it's pretty comfortable to just jump on and ride.
Yeah, moving into like suspension and overall trail performance, that's kind of where I think things start to taper down on the Forestal, sadly, because it was probably the bike I was most excited about
Same.
riding.
Yeah.
And I think some other of our guys were,
Yeah.
you know, and I think it was probably your first time ever seeing one, right?
Yeah, yeah. I had no clue. I never even heard of the brand before. So
Okay.
that was,
Yeah. And
I wanted to jump on that thing when you pulled it out of the truck the other day.
Yeah.
and it looks really good. Like,
Yeah.
out of the box, you look at this thing and you're like, that thing looks awesome.
It does. Absolutely.
Money.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and honestly, I mean, so our bike retailed for $10,750, so it's not the most expensive, either in our group review, but like it kind of exuded that premium.
Oh,
you
for
know,
sure.
like,
Boutique
yeah.
kind of.
but I think performance-wise, right, looks only get you so far, and I think the Owen's suspension, personally, you know, is not my favorite. I don't believe it's going to be the best for the most consumers, you know, who don't spend a ton of time wanting to tune and test and like adjust suspension. The charts on the fork I found were way off.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I set it up for what my weight was, and I was like, dude, I can't get this fork past 50% travel. So it was a lot of time to adjust, and there are lower, like the next step down, right, which is actually even lighter in
Yeah,
weight.
and comes with Lyric or RockShox Ultimate suspension.
Right, which I think is something we would agree. It also doesn't have the braking brakes, which we didn't get along with too well. So yeah, I think the Forestal had some moments that were really awesome, and there were times where we were like, dude, this bike is a blast, like we really like it. But you know, in a sea of good, really good and great bikes, you kind of have to stand out everywhere
Yeah.
to be a recommendation, right? So I think, for what it's worth, I think we all kind of gave the bike roughly around a 7 as an average. Robert, who is our guy out in the UK, who did spend some more time with Forestal, riding it in a bike park scenario, he's also heavier than us at 220 pounds. He gave the
and
bike,
he has a lot more time on the Olin stuff.
yeah, he gave that bike an 8.5.
Yeah. Yeah.
We were climbing a lot, and this drive unit suffered some major heat degradation, and the bike just got louder and louder and louder and gave me less and less power. All of you and like everyone else behind the camera, they were all in like trail mode, and I was in full boost and just falling farther behind them. And it just got louder and hotter and gave me less
Just like
power.
marbles and fluid.
Yeah, so that to us, you know, I mean, it was 95 degrees or 35 degrees for the rest of our viewers in the world. And so, I mean, it was warm, but it was, you know, like we
But
ride in hotter.
the rest of the bikes were doing okay. Like a
Yeah.
few little heat issues on other
Yeah.
bikes, but no one
Was
to the
fading that hard, yeah. So I think for us, there were just a few issues that unfortunately put the Forestal a little bit farther down compared to some of the other competitions. So that is the Forestal Siryon. Let's move on to the giant Trance X Advanced Elite E Plus Zero.
longest name award again.
Okay, yeah. So moving into the bike, which doesn't need much improvement at all. Holy moly, this thing rips.
Yeah.
It's a full power drive unit.
Yeah.
It's 85 Newton meter of power, 400 watt hour battery that they worked with Panasonic on. They're, I think, the only mountain bike company using the new 22700 battery cell tech, which they claim is a larger, more efficient cell that better, or I guess keeps its temperature down longer, so increased range, battery life cycles, etc. A lot of really neat tech going on, and it is without a doubt at 85 Newton meters way more powerful than anything else that's either 60 or 50 Newton meters. So it is a 140, 150 mil mixed wheel bike, and it features the Yamaha Giant Collab Sync Drive Pro drive unit. We tested the size large, so we'll get into Geo really quickly here. 480 millimeter reach, or 487, depending on the flip chip. 625 stack. We've got a 447 mil chainstay length, a 1,244 millimeter wheelbase, 76 or 76.7 seat tube angle, and a 65.8 or 66.5 degree head tube angle. Who wants, Sean? Let's have you lead this one off. I know you really like it.
Yeah.
I
Couldn't
mean, we
get
all
him
do,
off
but
this bike.
Yeah. I always wanted to just go back to riding this bike. It was,
mostly because you're lazy.
well, yeah. It did everything so well.
Yeah.
Like, so fast. Like, I just enjoyed riding it everywhere.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't feel like it was overgunned or, like, nothing held it back, really. But I guess if we're trying to stay on track with everything else, like for electronics, I mean, the motor's pretty quiet for being full power.
Yeah.
The lack of display doesn't bother me too much.
Okay.
But we did have an issue with that control module thing freezing.
Oh,
twice.
yeah.
Yeah.
Twice, was it 2 times?
Was it?
Yeah, I think we had 2 freezes.
I remember one.
I had one when I was out.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, not in this
Okay.
test, but on my
And
own.
then Dustin, you had one. Okay.
Yeah.
The Giants apps and stuff, I know you really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I did. I had no issues with any of the setup at the house when you gave me that bike. No problems setting it up, suspension-wise. The whole bike was really good for me. I really enjoyed it. Just like Sean, I was like, secretly, hey, give me the Giant. Come on, who's got the Giant? I want the Giant.
Yeah.
The motor, right?
Yeah.
That's bottom line. If I was to buy one of these, and like I was just looking at the weights, I'm only less than a pound more than that Trek.
Yeah.
At 50 Newton meters. Like, it's kind of a no-brainer what bike I would probably buy if I had the choice between those two.
Okay.
Right? I love the Trek on the downhill, but that thing did everything I wanted to do. I ran the jump trail with it, felt comfortable. It was an all-around great bike. It's one of my top 2.
Okay. Chris, or sorry, Nick.
Yeah, it's a great bike. It does, like you said, it does everything well. I don't love live valve, but this is one of the best executions of live valve I've used yet.
Okay.
And kind of faded into the background, which I haven't ridden a live valve that does that yet, so that was nice.
Yeah.
It kind of takes that top-end premium spec with a good motor. It's hard to beat. It just does everything well. It climbs really well. It's a night and day difference from the full power Giant that we tested at our big shootout.
Yeah.
It's just more compact. It does things better. It's a good all-around bike for me.
Yeah. And again, like kind of what you said, this bike is 44.5 pounds. The next heaviest bike is the Trek Fuel EXe at 43.7 pounds without the range extender, which we're regularly using on that bike. So all of a sudden you have an 85 Newton meter bike that's on par, right? I mean, most of the other bikes are in that 43 pound range, 42.8. So we're not far off. And that was, I don't want to say problematic, but it was tough for us when we set out to start this group review of, eBike Lite or, SL, whatever you want to call this category. And we're like, is this that bike? Because it has a full power drive unit, it just has a smaller battery. And I think that's probably worth, considering for consumers. It's like, you kind of get the best of both worlds with the Giant. You get a full power drive unit, you just don't get the range of a 700 watt hour battery like you would, but you also have a 44.5 pound bike. You're the general public guy. Who do you think this bike is ideal for?
This is for everyone.
Okay.
Like, I'm not gonna
No,
lie. There's no specific person that this is geared towards. Like, everyone would have fun on this bike. No one had really any complaints other than the freezing issue.
Mm-hmm.
And Nick, to pull up your climb, you beat the other times by what, 15 seconds or 10
oh
seconds?
yeah, that's
Oh,
right.
yeah.
The timed climb.
We did a time climb, and I think I was like 10 seconds quicker on that bike. And I was going all out on the other
you were
bikes.
flying.
Yeah, and that thing's way faster.
And I think it's worth noting how short that climb was. It was, most of the other guys were, I think, 110 to 120, and he was sub-minute. So it wasn't like a 10-minute climb and he was 10 seconds faster.
No, like on a 1 minute climb, you're putting time in.
That was big. And Sean,
if
you
it
rode
was
it.
a 10-minute climb, it would be
Be
5
minutes.
minutes on the next guy.
Yeah, and you took it out when I was on the Levo SL.
Yeah, it just drops you.
And I was just sweating
like working,
dripping down my face, and I couldn't even keep them in sight. Like, if you like climbing, you like going fast, you want just a well-rounded trail bike. You know, I will say 65.8, 66.5, steeper than I like. I never really, though, felt nervous or skittish on the bike. I think Giant did a really good job with this thing. Like, it is rad. I think, I don't know, most of us, I think, would agree we would step down a couple models to not get live valve, save some money. This bike's at 14 grand.
Yeah, one-piece bar,
They
I
have
would probably
models
not.
starting at
I mean,
6,000.
it's not the worst though.
It's
Like,
not the worst
I was
one-piece
pretty
bar.
comfortable.
It was fine, but there's just no adjustment.
Yeah, I'd rather just raise that bar a little higher, especially with that head tube angle. And like I said, I'd save money, get out of the live valve, put a 160 fork on there, and that would be my dream setup, this bike. But as it is,
Still
hauls ass, very fun, very capable. One last thing about the Giant that I think we would probably all take advantage of is their energy pack range extender, which is 250 watt hours, and that would essentially bump you, up from 400 to 650, which puts you into a full power e-bike category. And I think we all agree that we like this better than their full power e-bike. So this kind of gives you the versatility to have full power distance, but also have a lighter weight bike. All right, let's move on to the Orbea Rise. Orbea has models ranging from $5,299 to $11,499. We are testing the M Team here, which is $9,475. It's a 140, 150, 29-inch wheeled bike with the Shimano EP801 RS drive unit, which is essentially just the EP801 tuned down to 60 Newton meters. So it's the same size, the same weight, same profile as the full power drive unit, just tuned down. It has a 540 watt hour battery. So definitely has some impressive range.
Biggest battery
and,
on test.
Pretty solid range and power. Geo on the size large, 474 reach, 627 stack, 336 mil bottom bracket, 445 stays, and a 1,238 mil wheelbase, 76.5 seat tube with a 65.5 head tube angle. Orbea, Chris, why don't you lead this one off?
Yeah, sure. I rode this bike quite a bit on our local trails and here. What stuck out to me, it did everything pretty darn good.
Okay.
Yeah, it didn't wow me, but like I said, did everything great.
Okay.
Not extraordinary.
Sean, what are your thoughts overall? And
Well, I think
it's pretty simple integration electronically.
Yeah, nothing's really changed from its previous generation, aside from the bigger battery, which is an upgrade. It typically comes with that 320, 360.
I think.
And we do have a downgrade on wheels, but like the 540 battery is awesome because I was just in boost like all day yesterday while you guys were just trugging along.
Right.
Yeah, I mean it's a solid bike. Like I didn't have any issues with it.
Okay. Nick, as far as like geo, comfort, handling, where the bike sit for you?
I think Chris got a lot of it. It's a great bike. When this bike first came out a few years ago, I was like, this is the best lightweight e-bike out, but the whole market's caught up now. So now it kind of fades into, this is a good bike that has, if you're really into the Shimano system, if you really like that version of e-bikes, it might be the one for you because it does everything well, right? It's downhill very competent. We had for me, the fork felt a little divey. I think with some tuning, we could get rid of that. The Geo's spot on to kind of do everything well. It's a good trail bike. It runs downhill well. It jumps well. It kind of does everything pretty well. It climbs really nice. It's compact in the rear end. It's easy to get around corners. So Geo-wise and ride quality, I think, are right up there with the top contenders. It's just that drive unit is maybe if you're into Shimano, that's your drive unit.
Okay. So again, who'd you recommend this bike to? Sounds like it'd be pretty good for anybody, right?
A pretty good rider. Yeah, a good ride for anybody on the market, I think.
All arounder.
Okay.
I mean, I thought that EP801 RS was pretty quiet compared to some of the other ones. I did notice some cable rattle though inside the frame.
A little
That
bit.
was quite loud.
Yeah, I think the Orbea Rise is definitely a solid bike. I mean, with models starting down at $5,299, like you said, I mean, there are sales that happen regularly, so like you can probably scoop up a good bike at a pretty sweet deal. Yeah, the bike I think rode well. I would say that depending on your suspension setup, you can get this bike to feel a little bit stiff and like on top, or if you just air down a little bit, you can make it very cush and plush, which I personally like. Having the ability to control how a bike feels depending on where we're riding, right? Like, because if we were going to go hit that jump trail and just ride Speed King, I would just, I guess change my sag, add a little bit more air, and I'd have a stiff, poppy bike. But then if we're going to go ride Nighthawk and be bashing through rocks and trying to find traction, you air down a couple PSI, and all of a sudden you've got a bike that felt very different in two different scenarios. Sort of felt like it rode a little heavy when I wanted to jump it, but that could have been just some areas where I didn't take that time to change the air pressure on the jump trail coming after the rocks pretty quickly. But yeah, solid bike all around. Now we'll move into a bike that does feel incredibly light, and that is the Pivot Shuttle SL. So Pivot offers the Shuttle SL from $9,000 up to $13,199. We've got the $12,999 Team XTR build. It is a 132 rear travel, 150 front. It comes with the Fazua Ride 60 drive unit, which delivers 60 Newton meters of torque, has a 430 watt-hour battery with the promise one day of a range extender that I know lots of Fazua riders are waiting on. And yeah, solid bike, 39.6 pounds, 482 reach, 626 stack, 352 bottom bracket height, 432 chain stays, total wheelbase of 1,239 mil, 76.5 seat tube angle, and a 65.5 head tube. Fazua, ride integration, electronics.
Pretty clean, simple.
Okay.
I mean, the LED hub is, I mean, it gives you enough information, but a computer display would be pretty sweet.
Do you agree there? I know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I know sometimes you really like the info, and sometimes
Yeah,
you're like,
sometimes
I just need
like
to
I
know.
had some issues, and I'm on an Android phone pairing to some bikes.
Okay.
I don't know why.
Okay.
We were trying to troubleshoot that at your house like last week, and we never came to a conclusion on why that happened.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Just your phone.
yeah, it's just my phone probably, but that's something to think about.
Okay.
Making sure before you walk out, pair your phone.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Test that stuff
if you
out.
want.
One row of 5 lights. The color of the lights change depending on your power mode, and then obviously each bulb, I guess we'll call it, each light denotes 20% of your power range. So it can leave you guessing a little bit, especially when you're at 2 left, right? You're like, what power mode do I need to be in for how much farther I'm going? But I guess the more you ride it, or you pull out your phone and you can see an exact percent when you get into the Fazua app. Nick, geo handling, feel.
This is an awesome bike. Like it's short travel, but it doesn't feel like it in the rear. I mean, a 130-ish bike, this does not feel like a 130 bike. Short little chain stays, easy to pick up, easy to move in the air, it rides the lightest out of the bikes on test. You can easily pick this up, move it to whatever place you need on the trail. While the head tube's a little bit steeper than some of the other bikes, it's kind of mid-pack for steep head tube, it doesn't feel horribly skittish on the trail unless it really starts to get steep, and I feel like it dives a little bit. Just again, maybe some volume spacers would help with this, but that kind of steeper head tube angle makes it so it gets a little unsettled when you're really pounding very steep technical descents.
Okay. Sean?
Yeah, I mean, so I've probably spent the most time on the SL, from riding it in Colorado at their press camp to just out here too. It's just like, it feels like a rocket ship.
Mhm.
It accelerates immediately. You're
And
at like top speed.
And it only gains speed.
Yeah, you're only going faster.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, it's very easy to overshoot everything, but it, like Nick said, it's super maneuverable. Like, you can pick it up, throw it wherever you want.
Yeah.
Climbing the bike, the Fazua system is my second favorite system in our test.
Okay. Chris, takeaways for you.
Yeah, one of my favorite bikes to ride. Bottom
Okay.
line, I think I texted you right after I got off of
You
it.
did,
and
with
said,
lots of exclamation
"This
points.
is the best bike." I didn't look at any specs on it whatsoever before I jumped on, and I was like, "Oh, this is a 150 bike," and it's not. It's 132.
Yeah.
I had no complaints. When I'm looking at price and kind of value though, taking a step back there, it is very expensive. So I'm not sure who exactly would pay that money for that. So it's another thing like, hey, if you got a deal or, your trails really need something light, then I would go for something like that. But overall, the bike was a blast. Like I had zero issues with it. I didn't push it as hard as you did by any means. So I had no experience with it diving or anything, but I had a blast on that bike. Bottom line.
Okay. Kind of where I sat was, although I felt like the suspension could outperform the Geo a little bit.
That's a good way to put it.
Maybe that rear end was just so ready and capable for more, but the head tube angle and maybe that combined with the low weight, like right now we're kind of dealing with some pretty dry and loose conditions. And I think this bike really made me realize that, we talk so much about, and so many people who ride e-bikes know, e-bikes have smoother, better feeling suspension, better braking, and better cornering because of the weight. And I felt like when we were trying to find some inside lines over some sketchy roots or rocks, or, just feeling comfortable letting it open and attacking a turn, a heavier bike, 43.5 pounds, felt like it was just a little more planted and composed. And then when I thought about why the pivot just felt like it was a little squirmy on top, I was like, well, it's just so much lighter. And then I thought about like, okay, well, if we came here on non-e-bikes and rode, I would have the same feeling. And so then I kind of backtracked it to like, weight is a huge factor, I think, in how e-bikes can feel way better in some scenarios. But nevertheless, I do think it is a very awesome bike. I really, really like this bike. We all really like this bike. That's the Shuttle SL. What do you, a 2 thumbs up bike for you guys?
It was a great bike. Yeah,
Okay.
I think the price is the only major holdback on that. I mean, as with all these bikes, they're all expensive.
Yeah. Maybe we'll be working on a more affordable e-bike shootout. We did get some comments on that last video we made. People really like those cheap ones. Huh?
Well, maybe we'll continue down that path.
All right. Well, speaking of expensive bikes, we'll move on to the Scott Lumen, which holds a few records in our shootout this year.
Yeah.
One being the most expensive, right?
At 16,000.
It's $15,999. Okay.
You're right. You save $1.
And it is also the lightest at 34.7 pounds by far.
Yeah.
It has the TQ HPR50 drive unit, which is 50 Newton meters of torque, 360 watt hour internal battery with the water bottle range extender, which has 160 watt hours. It is a 130 mil travel front and rear wheel 29er. Definitely aimed at kind of the XC pinner type, I would say, for sure.
Oh, 100%.
Especially with that negative drop handlebar.
Yeah, the stem, and it's up there. 476 reach, 625 stack, 347 BB height, chainstay sit at 450, 1,240 mil wheelbase, and 77.2 seat tube angle with a 65.5 head tube. This is our first TQ drive unit that we've worked through in this roundup. So electronics and integration.
Yeah, I think the TQ has the second cleanest electronics integration behind the Forestal.
Okay.
Yeah.
The mode selector is pretty sleek and very intuitive, solid clicks. And the TQ display, excellent. I mean, the Scott's TQ display is a bit different than the Trek's, which just gives you battery bars.
The Trek just gives you bars.
No, the Scott just gives you bars.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah.
And then the TQ system is quiet.
Yes, it is nearly silent.
Yes. Yeah, and you can't see it, which makes it even better. And I mean that the HPR50 does a decent job delivering its power, but it's definitely noticeable if you're riding with like
60.
a Fotswa or the Giant.
Yeah, and the TQ app does allow for modification, so you can change max power output and assist support, within their set parameters. Obviously, it's not infinite, but so you can increase it to the detriment of range at some point. But if you got a range extender, I think you can certainly go up a bit and be fine there. But Chris, you spent a bit of time on that.
Yeah,
thing.
I rode it. It's a blast. It's almost a boutique bike as well. And I honestly, I'll be blunt here, I don't know who would buy it.
Okay.
I agree.
It's really fun, but a couple things I would change off the bat. Those tires almost killed all of us,
Yes.
the stock tires.
I mean, they are like XC pinner tires.
Yeah.
So come on.
They were so fast though.
Yeah, the thing flew.
So fast.
It flies. It's a blast. Remember climbing the road with you, and I just gone.
Yeah.
And it was great. It's fast. If you want to go fast on some relatively smoother trails, and you want to spend a lot of money and have a cool bike, go for it. But a couple things I didn't like, that mudguard fender. That has to go.
Oh.
Scott, please get rid of that for
Or
a
fix it.
$16,000 bike,
or
fix
improve
it.
it.
Yeah,
it rattled.
We
so
thought
We
everyone
thought
thought the bike was broken.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was just the
That's
rattle,
gross mud
and it was really loud.
Yeah.
The bars freak me out. So
Yeah.
obviously you can make it a lot more trail friendly if you got an actual stem and proper bar setup.
Dude, you sent a pretty massive double on that thing that I would have been a little nervous to hit on that bike, but you just sent it on the
it
first
jumps.
ride.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, I think to answer your question of who would buy it, I think it's going to be an XC guy. Maybe someone who is like, I don't know, maybe wanting to race e-bikes, maybe a recovering Lycra rider, you know?
Because I fall heavily into the recovering Lycra guy.
Okay.
And I don't think I would buy this bike. I think I would rather have
Okay.
a 22-pound XC bike, because
Okay.
I think they're nearly as fast.
Okay.
Because so I know everybody doesn't agree with this, but like a 50 Newton meter motor on a 34-pound bike is nearly as good as just a pinner XC bike to me. That being said, it does ride well. Rides like like a very aggressive 120, 130 bike.
It's just you're just saying like the bike falls into a questionable category.
I just
where
don't see who it really fits.
Okay.
Like
Yeah, I mean, the XC rider is going to be extremely fit.
like you're gonna have a
regardless,
fit
so-
crew anyways, and
Yeah.
like it's going to be nearly as fast, because I felt
And I'm pretty sure those are the ones who hate e-bikes the most.
that's
right?
true, dude. So why would they buy this?
Next to Enduro Bros.
It's a ripper. The negative drop's a little bit of a downer. I just don't love a negative drop bar. I mean, if you want to go up hills and have a little bit of assistance and have an XC pinner bike, it makes sense.
Okay. All right, there it is, the Scott Lumen, a beautiful and solid performing XC bike. Just one that I think we agree kind of sits in a weird unknown category. I guess time will tell, right? I mean, these bikes will either get sold or they won't.
Maybe
And
pick one up on a sweet deal.
we're gonna do a little timed uphill section. A few of the bikes are really close in power, whereas the Giant is definitely a standout. Some of the bikes, even with similar torque drive units, have different feel of speed and perceived effort. So we figured we would let each of the riders swap through the bikes and do a timed uphill stage, and we'll see just how long each of these bikes takes under all the riders, and see which one in fact is the fastest uphill. Nick.
It was good. We did the climb challenge. Clean runs every time. The Giant's in a class of its own.
Yeah, Nick hit the Giant for his final lap and did 58 seconds.
56 on the Giant.
56, which was the fastest period, but it was his last lap and he was still able to hit the
We're
fastest
still
down.
7 seconds faster than any other bike.
Yeah, and yeah, most of the other bikes for most of us were in the 108 to 118 range. So
It was fast.
what was the other bikes?
I put a 103 in on the Forestal. I put a 108 in on this.
Yeah. Okay.
So I
noticeable
mean,
difference.
10 seconds difference. It's quite fast.
As far as the bike that everyone felt was the slowest,
This is Specialized by far.
Levo SL. Okay.
The Trek was not far behind in perceived effort.
Okay. Okay. All right, next up we'll move to the Specialized Turbo Levo SL. Available in prices from $8,000 to $14,000, which is the S-Works model we currently have. The Levo SL is a 150, 160 mil mixed wheel, all-around shredder. Has some, in our size anyways, we picked an S4 because we typically like a little bit shorter, more playful bikes. Has a pretty sporty geoset, I would say. And something that's really cool, specializes in execution of the adjustability in the Geo. It has a 470 reach in the nominal setting, 635 stack, 348 millimeter bottom bracket height, 432 millimeter chain stays, with a total wheelbase of 1,238 mil, a 75.8 degree seat tube angle, and a 64.6 degree head tube angle, which again, most all those numbers can be changed pretty drastically depending on cups and chip flip positioning. So specialized 1.2 SL drive unit with 50 Newton meters of torque, 320 watt-hour battery with 160 watt-hour range extender. Levo SL integration, cockpit, electronics.
One of the better executed integration packages because it's minimally invasive on the bike, but you have everything available in the app that you want. You can set everything from power outputs, micro tuning. This bike has
You can even do the micro tuning on
the and the micro tuning is game changer for me because
it's a must have.
I feel like they have hit it out of the park with micro tune.
Okay. Sean, what do you think? Geo all around comfort on the bike.
I mean, Geo comfort, like it's pretty solid. I mean, at 6'2", all the numbers are great.
Okay.
I think I'd still take an S5 though.
No, I'd stick with S4.
Okay. I don't think I would go with an S4 with an S5 personally, but I also like a shorter, more playful bike. And, I think a prime example is like the trail we're talking about, going on a ride for after we wrap this up, in certain areas where maybe a little longer bike might pan out, in certain like jankier, tighter, like unknown instances, to me that shorter bike can allow me to ride faster because I can just pick it up and put it places so much easier. And I think, shorter bikes ride lighter to me, right? Like the weight isn't as far out in front. It's just, they're so much more fun. And
I mean, it's already a really light bike.
Yeah, at
39.2.
well, the S-Works is 39.2 pounds. So yeah, non-S-Works bikes are going to be into that 40, 41 range, I'd say, but still pretty respectable.
I lied and I rode this in boost all day yesterday when you guys were in trail. I couldn't keep up.
Okay.
I just think the 50 Newton meter motors, especially on that bike, I just wasn't getting the power that I thought I should be getting.
Okay.
And I was breathing like I was pedaling an analog bike.
Okay.
I was huffing and puffing getting up that hill, especially the first climb.
Yeah, that was really steep.
Super steep. If I'm gonna spend the money on an e-bike, and this is kind of overall, I think I would at least have to get a 60 Newton meter power motor. That 50, just even with the Trek too, I was constantly like, okay, I could use some more juice.
Okay. Yeah, I think you said it pretty well and funnily last night. You're like, if I'm buying an e-bike, I want it to assist me like an e-bike.
Yes. Yep. That was the one problem I had with that bike.
Okay. Okay.
I do think this bike does reward the kind of sit back, spin a high cadence, don't be pinning on the uphills. Just the torque curve on that motor really seems to reward the kind of sit back and pedal rather than just be pinning.
Yeah, you don't want to be racing up the hill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a leisurely stroll.
Yep.
I felt like on lower gradient climbs, it was fast. It was plenty zippy. So like you could get, like maybe someone who's just ridden one in a parking lot or like at the trailhead would be like, these guys are crazy. But like the bike does feel fast when it's not very steep.
Yep.
And in those scenarios, right, like you can ride this bike for a long time and be like, dude, this thing's got plenty of power. It's no way, they're all wrong. But then once it really starts going up, and I think part of similar with like, the TQ drive unit, it does have those moments where it is so fast and so supportive and assisting that when it goes up steeper, it almost makes it a more drastic difference. So it makes you think like, what just happened?
Yep.
All right, as far as general handling, performance, suspension, descending.
It's a couch.
Really?
Like most instances, I felt like it was just super plush,
Okay.
comfortable.
Okay.
Nothing like stood out as unnerving or harsh or anything like that, at least for me.
Okay. Okay.
First ride down yesterday, I think I said to you guys, I felt a little nervous on this bike. That was the rider. The next lap down, that thing ripped. And I was like, okay, this is one of the better descending bikes. But again, the climbing, it wouldn't be for me. The value for this, looking at a couple other bikes on here, I could get the same thing better performance for a couple $1,000s less.
I like this bike a lot. I think it's a really well-balanced bike for a lot of trails. Like you said, I felt like this one, you can push into it a little bit. It gives you some back. It jumps amazing. It climbs pretty well. It's very short chain stays with the small wheel. I don't love the way mullet bikes climb just because I like the 29er in the rear end. But getting around corners, really moving this around in the trail, very easy. It's very supportive, and it really does all things well for me. Like, it really descends well in tech. It does awesome on jumps. You can move it around on flowy, fast trails. It's a good all-arounder. The power is really where I think this one could, win a few points.
Well, let's move on next to the Transition Relay. The Transition Relay has offerings from $67.99 to $12,499. Our model is the XS Axis equipped $12,499 top of the line spec. It comes with the Fazua Ride 60 Newton meter drive unit, a 430 watt hour battery, which is the most easily removable battery, and in fact must be removed battery to be charged. But thankfully it's usually pretty aggravation free as long as you can get that door in and out.
And make sure the connection's good.
Yes, yeah. But by and large, a very quick and easy battery removal, which is nice for a lot of reasons. It is a 485 reach, 637 stack, 350 mil bottom bracket height, 448 stays, and a 1,280 mil wheelbase, 77.8 degree seat tube angle, and a 64 degree head tube angle. Worth noting, there is a high and low position flip chip, and Transition also offers a PNW version, which has a 27.5 rear wheel and more travel. And you can, I guess, do that yourself after the fact, right? The frames aren't necessarily different, so you can do that customization depending on, I guess, if you want to or if you're gonna ride somewhere else. Chris, for you, standouts?
Everything.
Okay.
This was the funnest bike for me. Consumer points through the roof. You guys hit on most of them. The travel thing is huge. You can't ship these on a plane. This you can, and ship the battery via ground. No problem. Say I've got my kids and I want to do a hot lap at a local park that doesn't allow an e-bike, I can pop the battery out, do a couple thousand feet if I have to. I'm not going to take it on a huge ride, but it literally checked every box for me, and I think it was the funnest bike that I rode in this test.
Nick?
Yeah, this is an outstanding bike. I think this wins my, it does everything so well thing.
Okay.
I say a lot of bikes do well, but this one really is on the great level of doing everything well.
Okay.
It's very forgiving.
It is very forgiving. Like, there's a lot of travel there if you need it, but it doesn't feel slack while you're just in low angle trails as well.
All right. I agree with you guys all around. There were some tight switchbacks, both descending and climbing, where the bike felt a little long, right? But is to be expected with a full 160 29er. But nevertheless, you could get it done. Either you'd have to, on the climbs, you'd have to stand up and kind of get over to do a little bit of a move, or it resulted in a little bit of a skid drift to get the back end around on the downhill switchbacks. But everywhere else, the bike was fun. Even on mellower, pedally trails, the Fazua drive unit had power and speed. The one issue we had with on the Transition was that the bike would not power on for us for a while. Transition was awesome enough to overnight us everything from controller to LED hub to a drive unit. And when we went to go start the swap out on those parts, we loosened up the ring controller, and just as we were starting to take everything apart, and while I was doing that, I was holding the ring controller by mistake. I just was holding it up, which is the power on mode. And as soon as I backed that Allen screw out about a half a turn, the bike powered on. And we didn't end up having to replace anything. But then if we tightened it back up, the bike wouldn't power on. So apparently there's a pretty fine, torque range where if you just slightly over tighten that ring controller, you could potentially lose power to the bike, which was interesting because we didn't tighten it more, and it was working fine for months, and then all of a sudden we just went to turn it on one day and it wouldn't turn on. So that was a little weird. And
Maybe a weird connection just in that one ring controller.
I don't know,
Yeah.
but I do know and have heard Fazua riders have had some issues, one of which being the range extender that was promised some point like early this year, which still isn't out. But nevertheless, I think it's worth pointing out. I think with our experience on the 2 Fazua bikes we've ridden, I feel pretty comfortable still saying that this would be a bike I would buy. And it wouldn't steer me away from anything, right? Okay. Well, there's the transition relay. Solid bike. I would say an awesome bike for sure. Okay, the final bike before we get into, I guess, awards and picks, right, is the Trek Fuel EXe. Alloy models starting at?
$5,500.
Okay. And then carbons starting upwards of 65, going up to 13,999. Our model is the 9.9 XX1. This is a 140, 150, 29-inch wheel bike with the TQ HPR 50, 50 Newton meters. Yeah, and a 360 watt-hour battery with a 160 optional water bottle range extender. Which we used quite a bit of. It was rad because it definitely put some extra juice in this bike and let us keep it in turbo quite a bit more, or ramped up the power
Max
assist
power.
in the yeah in the app. Let's see, 43.7 pounds. Reach goes from 483 to 489 depending on the flip chip position. 629 to 625 stack. 334 or 341 bottom bracket height with a 440 chain stays, 1,247 millimeter wheelbase. C-tube angle goes from 76.8 to 77.3, and a 64.8 or 65.3 degree head tube angle. The electronic integration, we don't have to touch much on it because it's another TQ bike.
It's super clean. Like we said, the display is definitely the better of the TQ systems. It's a digital, whereas the Scott was more of like an analog kind of. It does have a ton of whizzes, which I would get rid of personally.
Like tire whiz, shock whiz,
air
whiz, all the whizzes.
Yeah. All of that stuff, as well as the SRAM Axis componentry, is accessible in the Axis app. Trek also has their own app called Trek Central, which does everything from track rides to adjust power modes, check on the bike, etc. And I think their app is really good. I really like Trek Central. I think they did a good job on that app. And we did yesterday, specifically on that ride, we had a fairly long climb, and you guys were kind of talking about climbing power, etc. And I just bumped it up a little bit, didn't really tell you guys about it, and put it back in my pocket, and you both noticed a difference instantly.
Huge.
So climbs for you.
Same thing with the 50 Newton meter motor. I was trying to keep up. I was breathing a lot more, but when you bumped up the torque on the app, definitely helped.
Yeah.
But again, I want that 60 number, right? I want that 60 number, bottom line. If I'm going to spend that much money, I want it. But I felt like it climbed better with the same torque as the Specialized. I don't know why, but that was just personal preference for me. It felt a little more powerful, but still just lacking that gut that I wanted to see.
Yeah.
Nick?
Yeah, it climbed well, especially after we did some fine tuning on the torque curve and how it was delivered. It climbs well and it rides well. I feel like a lot of it, kind of like you said before, is it has a lot of assistance on flatter, rolly terrain, and then as soon as you start kick up, it kind of feels like it shuts down a little bit, and I think that's what a lot of what we were feeling, which we remedied with a little bit of work. But again, it's just not quite what the other bikes are, and so you do start falling behind the rest of the bikes.
And by other bikes, you mean the two Fazua 60s and the Giant 85.
Anything that's more than
50.
You have more power, they're going to be faster.
Okay.
It's just another one of those bikes where it just wants you to just kind of pedal it.
Yeah, soft pedal.
Not race up the hill.
Yeah.
Okay. How about Geo Comfort suspension platform?
Awesome.
Okay.
This.
You liked it as well?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite descenders.
Yeah.
Okay. As these kind of group reviews, grind on, right? Like we spend lots of time by ourselves riding each bike individually for entire rides. And then the closer we get to this day, the faster and more frequent the bike swaps get, because we're kind of starting to, you know, whittle down our favorites. And, you know, so there's usually 3 bikes that each rider is like, okay, switch, switch, switch. And the Trek was a bike that was kind of in that list for me. And I remember coming off of, I think I was on the Levo SL and one other bike, and then I got on the Trek, and aside from the very uncomfortable seat, I just got on and was reclimbing sections of like lava rock and just loose marbles, and I was like, gosh, I barely feel it. You know, it was just like butter over the top of the trail. And it just was a very comfortable climbing position. And I think for just all around trail riding and descending, it was also very comfortable. Ideal consumer, big takeaways, final thoughts.
I mean, it'd be good for pretty much anybody. I mean, I don't think most people need more than a 140, 150 bike.
Okay.
And I mean, it's light. Trek's got a robust dealer network, so like you're never going to be out of luck wherever you're at.
Okay.
Well, and just bumping that front travel up, I mean, it could go into that full like enduro shredder category as well.
That's exactly what I would do.
Yeah.
160 immediately.
Yeah.
Okay. Final thoughts for you. Who would you recommend this bike to?
I would recommend this to folks that like a more forgiving, more planted ride.
Okay.
Someone that does like to go fast, but doesn't have crazy skill level.
Okay.
That wants to push it a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
It'll save your butt
Okay.
here and there. Where a couple other bikes here, you'd be over the bars or flying.
Okay.
Most comfortable bike I could get on in 10 seconds. I'm like, okay, I'm good to go.
Yeah,
Okay.
that is true.
That is the Fuel EXe. I mean, these guys said it, a great all-around bike, and one we would definitely recommend for a lot of riders. So with all the bikes out of the way, let's get into our final picks, editor selections, and whatever else we want to talk about here that stood out from our time aboard these 8 bikes. I think before we get to awards, we should talk about topics that came up regularly for us in testing. One-piece bar stem combos. Okay, thumbs up, thumbs down.
Way down.
Two thumbs
Way
down.
down.
Why?
What about you guys, the viewers? One-piece bar stem combos, are you fans, yes or no? We are not fans, yet they keep coming out on more and more bikes.
Especially the super expensive ones.
Yeah.
Chain strength and durability. We have broken quite a few chains on e-bikes lately. We would love to see chains improved. I think that's something that's really worth considering if you've never owned an e-bike or thinking about getting one. Even if you are just a regular old mountain biker, you should really make sure you carry master links with you and be skilled and know how to repair a chain on the trail, especially if you're buying your first e-bike. And I would say, you know, some of the chains that we broke purely appear to be manufacturing or quality control issues, right? Because some of the issues that we're having are like chains are spider
snapping.
fracturing or like snapping like mid-link, right? Like we
And
had
only
one
one side.
chain, we had one chain that had like 3 links that were just broken in half.
And this wasn't just one brand. I mean, all
Yeah.
chains were.
So, you know, I know e-bikes are a somewhat new niche of mountain biking and product evolution has to catch up. But yeah, other than that though, I would say for the most part, things are getting a lot better. You know, from our first full power e-bike shootout we did, you know, whatever that was 5 years ago, now we're just wheels were folding, like it was bad.
I mean, we destroyed every bike on that one.
So yeah.
And made no major destructions.
Yes,
here.
yeah, wheels held up, knock on wood. So yeah, definitely stuff's getting better, but I think right now, one-piece bar stems and chains, those are the talking points. So you as a consumer, you don't own an e-bike.
Correct.
And you haven't ridden a lot of e-bikes until we kind of drug you out and started throwing you on all these things. So what's a standout for you coming from the non-e-bike world?
Being able to squeeze stuff in a quick lap after work. I can pull my kid up on some stuff now, which I couldn't access before. I remember being on one of the larger full power bikes a couple weeks ago, and completely different. It was a tank. It was like my dirt bike.
Right.
Whereas these lightweights or midweights it's almost like my trail bike at home, my 35-pound trail bike.
Yeah.
And they look like bikes. Like this transition here looks like a bike.
Yeah.
Somewhat.
Okay.
With a crazy tube, but you could get away with riding that somewhere.
Okay.
I think that's really cool.
You know, would you pick a full power e-bike to have even more power than these, or is 60 enough?
I think 60 is enough for me.
Okay.
If I'm gonna buy an e-bike, I said this last night, I want to be able to go up places without being extremely tired. I want to take this up to go down.
Okay.
Right?
And do it like
that's me.
3 times in a row.
Exactly.
But you wouldn't buy a full power e-bike, probably?
So I rode the repeater.
Yeah.
I love that bike too. It's
Okay.
a great bike.
Okay.
That one other bike, the tank I rode,
Yeah.
that was awesome to go down, but I just felt like I couldn't climb. I was like hitting pedals
Oh
everywhere.
yeah, the Canyon.
yeah.
That thing was a beast.
It was a niche bike, but I would definitely buy, I think, something like this guy right here, the Giant.
Okay.
That Transition.
Okay.
Something that's got a little bit more power
Okay.
or a lot more power here.
Okay.
If I'm spending the money,
Okay, you want power.
I want power.
Yeah.
Curious to know what you guys think. Are you looking to buy an SL to switch from full power, or would the SL be your first transition to the e-bike world? So with that out of the way, I think fun and informational stuff. I think this is we're all learning together right now, and I think that's important to have these conversations. So, all right, let's start out with the genre blender, right?
Yes.
Since we were talking about power and range and choices. So we're gonna call this, I guess if you wanna call it an award, right? We're gonna say the best of both worlds, the genre blender. Sean,
The Giant.
okay,
Yep. It's got everything.
okay,
All the power.
okay. We said it before, all around capable bike with the most powerful drive unit, pretty decent range.
It's great.
And with that energy pack, it really opens up both worlds, right?
Yeah.
You can have a light bike one day and you can have the range another. So
It'd still be lighter than probably the lightest full power bike.
yeah.
Even
So,
with the extender. on
Yeah.
it.
okay. So Giant Trance X Advanced, if power and speed are important, both up and down, that is gonna be the one for you. So next up, we're gonna move into kind of the just all around trail bike pick and just what we think is gonna be great for most general trail riders out there looking for a mid-power, lighter weight, e-bike light. And we were split down the middle on this bike. So this side of the round table chooses
The Trek.
Trek Fuel EXe. That side of the table chooses
I picked the Pivot.
The Pivot.
Pivot Shuttle SL. And we both agree that the opposite bike is
It's
really awesome.
still so good.
Yes, right? I mean, you love the Pivot.
Yeah, I love the Pivot on our local trails.
Yes.
I like the Trek on
Everywhere
trails
else,
here. Everywhere else, yeah.
And you guys love the Shuttle SL and feel the speed, playfulness, liveliness is good.
Yeah, I mean on the local stuff for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, even here with just a little bit of tuning on the fork, that thing is going to handle almost everything you can throw it at.
Moving on to the e-bike light of the year. The bike I think we all agree would probably be the one we would buy, but stands out as the best all-around bike and the one we have the most fun on. Nick?
Transition.
The Transition Relay.
By far.
Holy moly.
It's so good.
Yeah, that bike absolutely rips. Every one of us wanted to ride this bike as much as we could. It is comfortable charging at high speeds, rough, chunky, gnarly stuff. It is fun to jump. It rips corners. Like, it is just an awesome all-around bike. And yeah, Transition, props for
Nice
making
work.
one kick-ass e-bike light. So that's that. Thank you guys very much for watching, staying along for us on this journey. Thanks again to Schwalbe, Ninja, and Glade Optics, as well as the Running Y Resort and Klamath Falls for hosting us in this beautiful, awesome trail network and place so that we could test these bikes thoroughly and wrap up the series. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Leave any comments or questions you have down below, and we'll get back to you. Thanks again, and we'll see you out on the trails.